Hi, everybody. Good morning. So brilliant to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction. Yes, I'm Anna Abdelnoor. I am the co-founder of ISALA, and looking forward to talking today about building consumer loyalty through accountable brand experiences. So we're here because when brands make big, bold statements that they're wanting to fight climate change, their in-person experiences and events should stack up against that message. So shared experiences and emotions are at the core of experiential marketing and environmental activism, and we're going to be looking at that today. So how do we ensure that brands put words into action to earn the hearts and minds of conscious consumers? So I was established to events and it doesn't look like my clicker is working. Bear with me. Is that working now? Always fun on a digital event. So yes, ISLA was established to transform the events and experiences industry. It stands for Industry Sustainability Through Leadership and Action. And we are a powerful action-driven network empowering businesses to confidently deliver the next generation of events and achieve their climate ambitions. And we are about transformation at scale. So we are here today because we are the Ad Net Zero partner for Action 4, which is curbing emissions through awards and from events. We've been a partner for most of 2021, and we're really loving being engaged with this incredible network. So yes, we are the Action 4 partner. Across the globe, businesses and governments are transitioning to net zero. 1 in 3 of the UK's large businesses have pledged to eliminate their contribution to carbon emissions by 2050. Those firms include companies like BT, Sainsbury's, Unilever, Sky, and represent over £650 million. Some of you might even work for those companies and are probably actually engaged with the Ad Net Zero programme directly. So whether you are an organisation pledging to reduce emissions, whether you're an advertiser delivering a campaign, whether you're a marketer looking at your marketing strategy, events and experiences are going to form part of your communications. And those activities have an environmental impact. So if you add all of those events and experiences, big, small, internal, external, virtual, hybrid, live, international, national, whatever you're doing, they contribute to our global emission footprint, and they generate waste and have all kinds of ramifications on the planet, which is why we're making commitments to transition to net zero. And if we're doing that, we need to start focusing on sustainable event deliveries to achieve those goals. So, events are at the intersection of virtually every industry. They support almost every sector. And we believe at ISLA that through collaborative and consistent, can rapidly transition our industry to support that global goal of a climate positive future. So what is the attitude on climate change? Well, it's the number one concern for UK consumers. 2/3 of the population place it above COVID and above the recovery of the economy, because we are experiencing the impacts of a shifting climate even in the UK. And in the last 10 years, the scepticism around the effects of climate change have been surpassed by the reality of its effects. So across the globe, attitudes have shifted. Businesses are moving towards putting people and planet front and center stage of strategy, and consumers are looking to brands and governments to do the same. And I think it's really important to remember that we are consumers. We are part of these statistics. So we're not outside of them. 2/3 of us here probably put climate change as our number one concern right now. And it's really important to put ourselves in that picture, because we're creating experiences. 74% of UK consumers believe that environmental claims made by businesses should be better regulated. As consumers, as we wake up to the world around us, we're becoming much more informed, and we believe in accountability. And we're not just thinking with our wallets, but actually demanding transparency about business and brand claims and the actions that brands are making about treating staff fairly or sourcing goods ethically, not misusing customer data, and about putting the environment first. And about 71% of people believe that companies should be penalised for poor performance. So those are big stats. There's definitely a shift in consumer mindset around brand accountability. And so putting that into the context of businesses, 90% of executives think sustainability is important, and remember, they're consumers as well. But only 60% of companies have a sustainability strategy. So although those endeavours often make good business sense and they deliver cost savings and working towards recovering our planet, businesses are failing to deliver their ambitions with robust strategies which are embedded into day-to-day activities. So I think part of that challenge is around the lack of resources available, the lack of knowledge, lack of awareness. How are you meant to be strategic if you don't have visibility over the problems and don't have the resource and education to be able to address that? So that's something we'll pick up again shortly. But we're coming onto the subject that where does this leave us? The good news is that consumers want to do something about climate change. They're looking to brands to guide them in making the right choices. And we're in the business of communication. So we have this amazing opportunity. We're at the intersection of all sectors in events. And so we have events and experiences as this incredible vehicle to move people in the right direction, to kind of shift behaviors, create change, and in that, winning the hearts and minds of our customers, of our audience in the process. And ultimately, actions speak a lot louder than words. And it's all about turning intention into action that's going to drive the change that we need and improve our customer loyalty, because this is what we're talking about today. And so the time is ticking. We need to start adopting this kind of new mindset, this way of using our power to shift change. So where do we start? Well, 2021 saw the return of live events with a bang. We have the long-awaited COP26 summit that's happening at the moment. We're seeing leaders, activists, nations, brands, faith leaders, all united for that common climate goal. And after social seclusion and 18 months of forced social distancing, Q2 and Q3 have seen this amazing revitalization of the industry, from sporting events and festivals to experiential moments and political activities like G7 and G20. And across the board, people have been gathering to experience their passions again and celebrate that space that they are passionate and excited about. And we believe that's where we need to tap into to create that accountable brand experience, which grows that customer loyalty. So one of the things that we want to talk about is fandom. As fans, we come together and engage in this kind of shared sense of hope and expectation. We support something that we love and believe in and are passionate about, whether that's a football team or a musician, or a political cause, party political conferences, those sorts of things. And at times, that passion and that kind of hope and expectation that we have can be very fragile, and we might get frustrated if a goal is missed or a climate target's not achieved or something along those lines. But that true fandom, that connectivity, sits at a really emotional level because it's something that we believe in, it's something that we're passionate about, and we have a loyalty to something, even if it might let us down. And we need to capitalize on that in the communications industry. So we have this idea around, also have this idea about activism. And it looks like my clicker has gone again. Bear with me. There we go. We are in the age of activism. The fan mentality can be seen across the political spectrum as well. So the collective voices of a group that challenges and wants to overturn the status quo and to drive change is incredibly awe-inspiring and energizing. And millennials, followed by Gen Z, are twice as likely to say that they're changing their habits to reduce environmental impact. And they're the ones that are going to take to social media. They're the ones that are going to take to the streets and shout from the rooftops to essentially out brands that don't live up to those expectations. So whether it's activism through groups like Extinction Rebellion or Pussy Riot or Black Lives Matter, individuals collect, and those differences are set aside to fight for a common goal. So how do we tap into this mindset? So we've got fans and activists which have something in common, which is a passion for something that drives their behavior. And the way that they engage in that space creates lasting experiences and lasting impressions. So fans and activists are a captive audience that are prepared to explore and learn and engage and change their behavior to follow their passion or belief. So how, as brands, can we tap into that? How can we influence them to do something when it comes to the climate? And how can we capture the imagination of this audience and engage them in being part of the solution alongside the work that we're doing and the work that governments are doing? How can we capitalize on that space and create purposeful, accountable experiences that have a cause at their core, because that's what people are asking for, that's what they're looking to. And all of that will support transformation at a foundational level, not just on the surface. This is about touching someone's lives in a long-standing way, not just for an evening. So events that are bringing true value to consumers, and that value is intrinsically felt on an emotional level, are much more likely to experience greater return on lifetime customer value. And I think everybody's heard the phrase, we spend money to buy things we don't like to impress, spend money to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. And we want to flip that phrase on its head and talk about creating space to engage with people purposefully in moments that matter, to leave lasting positive impressions on people and planet. So humans are super social animals. It makes us feel better to know that we're in something together. It's how we make connections. And I think if we take things like the NHS Thursday Night Cheer, which brought communities together up and down the UK, we're all celebrating something greater than the sum of its parts. So how do we learn from that sense of connection and drive that change to engage those audiences who are looking to companies to help them make the right decision? It's about creating experiences that spark fandom, that talk to that inner activist, and that's how we drive that change and help shape the future. But there is a big knowing-doing gap. So how do we bridge the gap between the intention of businesses committed to a net zero future and action? So how do we look at our day-to-day operations and our event delivery specifically, and bridge that gap between what we'd want to do with actually doing it? We're asking about how we can confidently deliver the next generation of events, which focus on that global climate ambition of a 1.5 future. And we want to ensure that our climate goals are applied across our full events programme and deliver against that. So it kind of comes down to this question about emissions. This is why Ad Net Zero exists. This is why COP26 is taking place at the moment. This is why we're having a conversation. Because if the emissions have to stop, then we must stop the emissions. To me, that is black or white. There are no grey areas when it comes to survival. And that is obviously the wonderful Greta Thunberg. So what does this mean in the event space? Well, it's about our operations. Our operations are the space in which we can take direct control. They are the choices that we make in the way we run our business, the way we engage with our people and attract talent, the way we shape our company culture, the communications that we put out. We have direct control in that space. And that all sits within where we are in the value chain and the space that we occupy within the value chain, where we're able to assert our influence based on, the suppliers that we choose, the way we engage with our stakeholders, the way we engage up and downstream. And that also includes our audience. But this sits more broadly within the marketplace, which is where we have our opportunity. This is the space where we can drive change through how we take control in operations, how we influence our value chain, and therefore how we operate in the marketplace. And if we're talking about this in the context of emissions, we want to look at our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions in our operations. So that's our direct emissions, so energy that we use to power the lights and the laptops in our offices, through to the fuel we put in our company cars. And then our scope 2 emissions as well, which are indirect emissions, and those associated with literally the supply of that energy to our offices or into our cars. And then we've got our supply chain, which is our scope 3. And this is where we have an amazing opportunity to make a difference, and where we really need to be focusing our attention, because scope 3 is about 70% of our event emissions. And those are the emissions that are the consequence of our activities, from kind of sources or assets that we don't own or control. So if you're an event planner, within an agency or kind of in-house within a brand, where if you're planning that event, all the things that you're buying, those are your scope 3. The logistics team, the logistics, trucks and transportation, or the materials that you're buying through your supplier to make your sets, for example. Those are our scope 3 emissions. And so in terms of tying this all together, ISALA was established to transform the events industry. And we are enabling brands to be accountable and meet customer expectations through their commitments to net zero. So how are we doing that? Well, we've created Trace, which is a real-time carbon reporting tool for the events industry. It is designed to help you accurately measure the impact of your events and experiences and set reduction plans with that information. And so that's how we can create that transformation. So it looks at the full scope of event deliveries. It captures carbon and waste impacts from catering, trucking, attendee travel, your online attendees, through to what you're throwing away. I think I've said what you're feeding people. It looks at the full scope of an event delivery. And it enables you to estimate and compare different approaches. So it's very powerful because you can input some information like 500 beef mains, for example, and see what your carbon footprint would be, and then look at a different choice. If we reduce that by 50% and made 50% plant-based, what would be our savings? So it gives us a bit of carbon literacy, because that's the really, really important part, is starting to understand the decisions that we can make. And with all of that, once you've actually made your decisions and delivered your event or experience or your activation, whatever it is, you take your data and you can actually accurately measure your carbon footprint. And you are able, through the dashboards, to analyze your performance immediately. So you don't need to rely on a third-party carbon consultancy. This is about you, your team, your organization being able to educate and upskill through the information, because so much of this data is visualized for you in the tool. And lastly, it helps you report in line with global standards. So it looks at your scope 1, your scope 2, and your scope 3. It's compatible with businesses reporting in line with the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. If you're committed to a 1.5 pathway, the Science Based Targets Initiative, or you're part of Race to Zero, it is designed to help standardize the way that you are measuring your events and experiences in line with your broader company reporting initiatives. And the really exciting thing here is the ability for you to see data, for you to visualize data, understand exactly what it means per guest, your carbon footprint per guest, whether they're in person or they're online, the biggest areas of impact divided between, your scope 1, 2, and 3, across the catering choices that you make, across the production choices that you make. And inbuilt within the tool are actually tips and suggestions for how you can reduce your carbon footprint. If you made X decision in a different way, it would look like this. And the really exciting thing about this is that you can see it on a single event basis, but actually all that data is then amalgamated for you, so you can see your full events program. So you can see the full event of an annual program, or a 3-month program, or a series of particular events, or a roadshow, however it is. You can look at that based on your conferences. You could look at it based on your activations at a festival. You can look at it to understand your footprint at your at exhibitions where you're buying space, all these sorts of things. So it's a really, really powerful tool. And that data visualization piece is how we can start understanding carbon in such a way that we can make better choices moving forward. And so this comes down to the fact that sustainability is a really complex global issue. It's not a single company problem. It's not on one person, it's not on one business, it's not on one nation to solve the challenges that we're facing with the climate crisis at the moment. It's on all of us to engage in that. And so Trace addresses the need for collaborative action by essentially contributing to transformative change. So the Trace data that's input into the tool is anonymized and aggregated backend, and it contributes to the ISALA industry reporting initiative, so that we can build a full picture of the event industry, understand exactly what our emissions and waste footprint looks like. We can use that information to set ambitions and targets in line with global trajectories, and to review that year on year to see how we're progressing against that. We can model different reduction pathways based on different choices that we might be able to make. And the really key thing here is that visibility over our key hitting areas. And that will enable us to, as an organisation, ISALA, to track infrastructure improvements, look at innovation, technological solutions. How can we change the way we do things? How can we develop resources, projects? What is the action that's going to drive transformation across the sector? It gives us, as an industry body, the capability to actually deliver against those aims and ambitions that we have, which is about contributing to transformative change. And ultimately, it all comes back to this point that only 60% of companies have a sustainability strategy. Well, measuring our event impact means that we can be more effective and strategic about the way we address those event deliveries, to shape our response to address consumer concerns and desires, and implement our wider brand and corporate sustainability ambitions, and feed into that development of sustainability strategies across every business. And this is really the only choice for those brands that want to be here and want to be relevant in the next decade. There is really no other option. sorry, skipping on from there. So what do we do? The question here really is, how do we build consumer loyalty through accountable brand experiences? And ultimately, it means about building trust by being true to purpose. That's about talking to that space between fans and activists, where we're looking at that core area, what is going to engage people, what's going to motivate people, what's going to drive change, and what's going to give us as a brand that position that is purposeful. It is about being transparent and reporting on the impact of our activities. So if we're committing to a net zero pathway, we need to be transparent about that, and that focuses on the planet. And ultimately, that enables true transformation. It enables transformation at a climate level. It enables transformation at a behavioral level. It enables transformation at a systemic level. So how do we change the way we operate, our systems and behaviors, to create essentially a future fit for purpose? So it's all about, how do we win hearts and minds through experiences for the future? Well, it's about, when we make big, bold statements to fight climate change, our in-person experiences have to stack up against those messages. So thank you very much for joining me today to talk about accountability to drive consumer loyalty. I'm Anna Abdelnoor. We do have a booth, our ISLA booth, so please feel free to pop over and find out more about how we can support you and how to engage in our action-driven network. But I think that we have a few minutes left, so I will wait for any questions to come through. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a question from Mariella Brown. How much support has ISLA seen? Amazing support. So we launched in September 2020 with 12 founding member agencies, and in 14 months, just under 14 months, we've grown to over 92 members. And our ambition is to represent the full scope of the industry. So we have agencies, brands, venues, suppliers, media houses. We've seen some amazing support from the industry, and I think it's because we talk to that action space. We're not just talking about ambitions or intentions. We have resources, we have tools, and we have the support that people are looking for, and that's really talking to people, and there's been a lot of value in that powerful network. After Proceed, where is ISLA heading next? We have really big plans for 2022. Really big ambitions. There's a lot of infrastructure projects that we're looking at. We're looking at greater standardization across the industry and the accessibility to that, and obviously growing our network and working with more people. Good question. So it depends on the number of events essentially that you're looking at per year, and it varies whether you're based in an agency or whether you are in-house at a corporate, whether you're are looking at a single event and so on. The most base price for starting in the agency space is $17.50 per year. So it's really cost effective. It's super accessible. And the idea of it is about making it accessible at scale to as many people as possible. But obviously, as a non-profit organisation, we need to be able to keep going, keep developing the tool, making sure that it stays relevant, improving the system, and so on.